speech, and I think that Phillip has found subject matter which will engage the audience and keep us alert, as Emily tells us it's important. Phillip says, we will be discussing the surprising health benefits of sex, its important role in our lives, and how its perks extend well beyond the bedroom. By considering different points of views and addressing doubts and fears before they become roadblocks, Phillip would like to demonstrate an open mind and invites his audience to respond in kind. His talk is entitled, Sex, It's Not Just Good to You, But Good for You. And the time is
15 to 20.
15 to 20 minutes. Welcome, Phillip.
We're going to dispel some myths and some misunderstandings, so I'm going to start right at the beginning. We've all been led to believe that in order to survive, your basic tenets are you need food, you need shelter, and you need water. I'm going to add sex to that. Dispel this myth right away. We all know people who are homeless, so you can't actually survive without shelter. Then, every time you've noticed a infomercial on TV where they're asking you to donate to a charity, they're often in places that have no food, famine, and no water, drought. But what they do have is children. So that leads us to believe that sex has not been given up on. A major component of sex is passion. Now, there is a small group in our population who don't think, or I shouldn't say don't think, but don't engage in sex regularly. They are celibate. Some by design, and often the largest member of that group is clergy. And there are clergy members who have avowed a state of celibacy, which they've determined that for the rest of their lives, they will remain celibate. Now, we've noticed that oftentimes they aren't able to keep that vow. Sometimes they've engaged in sex with each other. Unfortunately, sometimes they've engaged in sex with minors. But it's very hard for them often to maintain that vow of celibacy. So why is it so hard? Why is sex become such an obsession? Well, I have a theory that I believe when we were created, that God decided that he wanted to make sure we were going to continue to procreate. That this thing called sex would be something that we would not give up. So he designed it to be so intense that no one would ever consider not having it as a part of their life. In fact, as an incentive, he ensured that when we engaged in the height of uninhibited passion, might even call out his name. Basically, it was a habit that he decided that we should continue to do to continue to procreate. So, where do we see it showing up? Madison Avenue has decided sex sells. Remember the Ultrabyte TV commercial? Sex appeal in what? Toothpaste. Because they knew instinctively people would be drawn to sex. Now, when I listen to the infomercials with sex enhancers, normally at the end, pharmaceutical companies are really smart. When they get to the part about what the side effects are, they normally run those past you real fast. The letters are small and they'll try to make sure that they get that part out right away so you don't know. Oh, if you take this, you can be sick and vomit and throw up and lose your sight. But if you notice, I listened to the Cialis commercial. They announce in front of the side effects, if you have an erection lasting 4 hours, they want to make sure subliminally that people hear that as an attraction to the drug. Now, how and where has sex helped? Well, sex lowers your blood pressure. If you want to replace your treadmill and you want to burn 5 calories per minute, guess what can do that? Sex! A landmark study found that intercourse superficially lowers your blood pressure. Another study shows that sex lowers your risk for heart attack. Believe that. A great way to keep your heart rate going, sex. It helps your estrogen and your testosterone levels. So one of the good ways to keep that is in balance. Continue engaging in sex. Sex also lessens pain. Believe it or not, orgasms can block pain. So instead of reaching for an Advil, ask your partner to engage in an orgasm or to help you engage in an orgasm. It's a form of stimulation that lessens the pain. What else can sex do? Improve your sleep. After an orgasm, there's a hormone called prolactin that's released. And that helps us to relax. Puts us in a state of euphoria where we feel great. And just the closeness of being close to your partner. Think about it. In media, we have learned that often we say when people are frustrated, somebody's maybe a little antsy at the job, what is the underlying tone that people whisper?
They just need a
Person
good.
needs to get laid. Wow, he must be having a bad day. He's just wow. The flip side of that is if you come in glowing and you're excited, the endorphins are racing and people's like, wow, he must have got some. What's the punishment that is often described when you want to refrain from engaging sex? You punish your partner. So we've learned when the husband is sent to the couch, it's not because he is finding a new place to sleep. Often the wife has decided that this is the cutoff. We're not going to engage in, so you will sleep on the couch. So there's a connotation we learn that sex is good. And the way to punish someone is to cut off the sex. How many people remember the pajamas with the footies? They had these little pajamas. You remember the pajamas with the footies and the thermals? Ooh, I remember if you saw a woman put that on, it was like, oh, it's going to be a long night tonight. Because the innuendo was there was going to be no sex. So, where do we go to learn about sex? How do we find out about this? Because it's something that's vital to us, so where will we go? So, how many people signed up for driver's ed in school? Show of hands, how many people took driver's ed? Okay. In driver's ed, did you discuss the crankshaft, the fuel injection, the tire pressure? Anybody discuss that in driver's ed? Vaguely, if at all. What did you do in driver's ed?
Drove.
You drove. You learned how to drive. So, my thinking was, if I signed up for sex ed, perhaps they might bring in a surrogate, but at least I would learn some techniques. The only thing I got out of sex ed was an increased vocabulary. All of a sudden, I realized I had a scrotum and women had a vulva. No one shared any information on how to master this thing called sex. Where do we go? How do you learn it? At the adolescent stage, we're bombarded with images. And so we make our belief based on the images we saw. So the images that I remembered most prominent in my mind were that sex was something that was predominantly in a missionary position. Getting a little older, I would hear discussions amongst the elders, and I found out that there was something else involved. Another form of sex that TV and the cartoons never mentioned: foreplay. I figured, signing up for sex ed, I was going to have the ground floor on learning how to master this technique. Think about it. When you're a kid, you can't go to your parents and say, "Mom, Dad, I met this wonderful girl. I really, really want to impress her. I want to be the starlight in her diary. I want to make all those adventures for her come alive." Is it possible that you could give me some advice or some suggestions on how to engage in oral sex? Well, my parents were never going to be the roadmap to provide that kind of information to me. I automatically knew that that was not going to be the place that I could go or turn to get that kind of information. Now, here's the thing. Women, when you all get to adolescence, there's all kinds of information. You all get that talk where mom says, "Well, girl, you're getting at that age, your body's gonna start changing, you're gonna go through biological." That's a rite of passage for women. We don't get that. They got all kind of pamphlets that the government gives you all. I mean, you got Planned Parenthood, all kinds of information. Men don't happen to get that. We're kind of left on our own to figure it all out. So for me, my worst fear was the anxiety of not knowing what I'm supposed to do. Now, I realize I'm probably going to have to do a lot of bluffing here, because I'm not really sure on what I'm supposed to do. I'm not really sure how she's supposed to feel. But I do have an idea that if I'm doing this thing right, I'm going to be looking for some kind of response. Now, when we're young, we don't know what that eventually will be. Nobody tells you, no father or uncle or male role model is going to inform you on what are some of the signs. So you're kind of left to wail and figure it out all by yourself. So, trial and error are how most men come to this enlightenment. Trial and error. So, I'm going to share with you some of my trial and error on trying to learn how to master this most complex subject. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer to come from the audience. I'm going to ask Deanna to come join us.
I'm not doing any.
This will be simple. The only thing I will require from you is an open palm.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Got it out.
Now, why this is so necessary is, again, something I didn't know, didn't learn. I thought, well, okay, when I get to the part of the oral sex. Well, when you're young, open palm. When we're young and we don't know, we think. Oh,
Watch yourself.
I'm sorry. We think paintbrush represents the tongue. That
Is this real?
like a paintbrush.
Oh God.
Like you're Tom Sawyer and you're whitewashing a fence. So now the woman has to determine, am I being weatherproofed or what is supposed to go on here? So I'll just share with you something that if you think about yourself as an artist and you think about the woman body as the canvas, now you can paint a Picasso, a Matisse, and if you find that this diagram was a little hard for you to follow, just write your name.
Oh my God.
However, thank you, Deanna.
You're very welcome. Do you have a napkin?
No. The trial and error really seemed to be something that throughout all this thing about sex really came to happen. The most important thing I learned was making love is the one time in life that I believe that we display the greatest part of our humanity, because we're saying to our partner, where most of the time we always have this idea about looking out for number one, or I'm wanting to make sure that I take care of myself. I want to take care of you, and I want to put your needs and your wants and your desires in front of mine. And if you think about that, there often isn't an occasion to do that outside of sharing the bond of intimacy with someone else. I'm going to share with you what I think was the greatest moment on screen for erotica. Some of you may have seen this. You can't see it?
Need it to be
Yeah,
full screen.
Kelly?
Top?
There we go.
Can you see it now?
You might want to walk around.
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Just write down the website. Ah, 80s, very nice.
Can you see it?
Sort of.
Bill
Yeah, thank
Cosby
you.
show.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, tilt.
What was it?
Oh, Cosby. Yeah.
Bill
that's
Cosby.
good.
Bill
Oh.
Cosby.
There you go. Tilt like that.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just can't go church this
I know, I know.
Wow.
Oh, I know that one.
You saw it?
Yeah, I've seen all the Cosby's whoopsies.
You're out of it. It's generational. Oh, I know it's a Cosby show, but I don't know.
Got it?
I assume he was doing something.
The reason I think that's one of the most erotic moments on TV is because it demonstrates that sharing and sex between two people really, if you think about it, the most erogenous zone is not between our legs, it's between our ears. And I learned as a kid early on that every woman is different. And so the erogenous zones will be different. Who remembers the Addams Family? Remember Gomez and Morticia? He used from her wrist to her shoulder as the launching pad to turn her on. There isn't anything greater in life than that. Being able to sit and share, as we saw here, even something as simple as slicing up an apple. And that is why sex is not just good to you, but good for you. Madam Toastmaster.